Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis. Welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. Today's presenter is Kyle Akerman. I am pleased to announce that Kyle has done the most talks to this meetup group. This is his 7th talk, which is by far a record among all presenters. And every one of Kyle's 7 or 6 talks to date has been on Google Analytics. And now today, he's done a few already on GA4, Google Analytics 4, and today he's going to continue with that. I think we are past the July date, so Google Analytics 4 is here. It's a huge change because it's a brand new measurement platform, and there's a lot to learn about properly setting it up and using it to find insights. Kyle's created a framework called SMART, and that framework will help you make the transition from universal analytics to GA4 a little bit easier. So Kyle, thanks for joining today, and take it away.
All right, thank you, Dennis. Let me just get the tech here. Screen sharing. Hold on. Just screen. Oh, so can you see my screen? I'm not sure what. Yeah. Doesn't look like.
Oh, wait. I need to make you co-host.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking something.
There we go.
Oh, technology. Okay. Share screen. Share this one. Do that.
Okay.
And get to. Come on. Slide share. Oh. Slowly loading. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me today. So today we're going to talk about migrating to GA4. And when we talk about migrating, that's really just another word for migrating is moving. And so if you're not familiar with me, I've lived in Chicago for 20 plus years in the city, about a mile north of Wrigley Field, if that gives you a reference point. So I was there for 20 plus years until I decided to move to Nashville, which is where I am now. And since I haven't moved in about 20 years, I quickly realized there's a lot to do. You got to pack things up, tons of boxes, more boxes, suitcases. There's stuff everywhere. You got to load it onto a truck. Then you got to move it, transport it to your new location. And then you got to unpack it. And there's just a lot of pain involved. And what I kind of figured out was moving stinks. And I think we all know that if we've ever gone through the process. Well, that's in the real world. Unfortunately, now we all have to make another big move, which we didn't really necessarily choose to do, but we have to move from Universal Analytics to GA4. Well, why do we have to do that? That's the big question. Well, that's because Google decided to kill off Universal Analytics. And as Dennis mentioned earlier, that happened about 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, whatever it is, July 1st. If you've gone in and looked at your data in UA, most of you will see something like this. So your data stopped collecting. So our only choice, if we want to keep using Google Analytics, is we have to go to this new platform, which is GA4. Now, it's been around a while, but unless you were an early adopter, you may not have hooked it up. So, we said that moving stinks and it's a pain in the butt, but can we make it easier? There's no easy button, but we might be able to ease the pain a little bit. And so that's where I started thinking about, well, how can we do this? Can we get smart about moving to GA4? And I came up with, mostly for myself to help me at the start, I came up with this framework called the SMART framework, just to kind of keep track of everything, the high level things that I need to do. And then I can help my clients with all of these things too. So there's 5 key elements in the SMART framework because I love acronyms. So we're going to go through each of these 5 pieces. So The first one, anytime you're trying to do any big project, is you need to have a strategy. So you need to have some kind of a plan of what you're going to do. So that plan, the reason we need that is because Dennis mentioned, this is not a small upgrade to Universal Analytics. This is a completely different platform. And so that means you can't combine data from the platform. So that causes some complications. So when we're constructing our plan, these are some of the elements that we need in there. You want to be able to identify the questions that you need to answer with your data, because that's what all these tools are to help us answer our top marketing and business questions. Then you need to think about the information that you're going to need to collect to answer those questions. What data will you need? And then you should also think about the actions you will take once you get those answers, because, data measurement without any action is kind of useless. And then you want to obviously have KPIs that'll help you measure how well you are performing. And I'd like to note that have target values for those key performance indicators. So how many leads per month do you want to get? How many newsletter signups per month? That kind of thing. Additionally, you need to kind of think about the resources. So who's going to set up GA4 for you? And that's, like setting things up like Google Tag Manager, creating custom events, setting up any conversions, that kind of thing. And then once you've got it set up, who's going to do the reporting? Who's going to do the analysis? So the choices you have basically are, you can DIY, do it yourself, your internal team, or you can work with some outside partners, and that's where you get the done with you or done for you. So those cases, that's where you're working either with an agency or a consultant, someone like me. So that's kind of the resource planning you want to think about too, and document this stuff. So then the next step, once you've got your strategy in place, so the next is the M in the SMART framework. And the M is just measurement. So this is kind of like the foundation. This is implementing the setup of GA4 so that you can collect the data that you need. So I always recommend to everyone that you use Google Tag Manager for this. It'll kind of future-proof you as your measurement needs might become more advanced. It's just easier to implement everything through Google Tag Manager. And you want to first, I think it's useful to review what you used in Universal Analytics. So specifically look at any events that you might have created, any filters to kind of, segment out your data, and then obviously any important goals, because you're going to want to recreate all of these things. If you want to call these EFGs, you're going to want to build those out in GA4. And this is also a time to, just like when you move in real life, do a little cleaning. So if there's stuff if there's old stuff in your house that you're like, hey, I don't need this anymore, get rid of it. Don't bring it into your new house. So similarly, don't copy everything into GA4, because there might be a lot of junk that you don't need. So this is kind of a way to start fresh too. I'm going to quickly go through like a minimum viable setup. So if you've been using GA4 for a while, you may be well beyond this, but this is for people that are just like, hey, I just want to know what I need to get up and running. So, and I'll show you each of these in some slides coming up, but so you're going to create a GTM container, and you're going to have a GA4 config tag. And then you have to add that Google Tag Manager code to every page of your website. We're going to review something called enhanced measurement, which is a cool new feature that's in GA4. There's a data retention setting that I'm going to recommend. I'm going to show you how to just quickly link Search Console and Google Ads. And then you're always going to want to create at least one conversion so that we can measure performance of your website and your marketing. So If you, this is a screenshot from Google Tag Manager. This one's actually old because there is no universal analytics tag anymore. They pulled that. But you're going to use this GA4 config tag. And then you'll go in and you name your tag, and then you'll enter in a measurement ID, and then you set a trigger to all pages because you need to fire this on every page of your website. And then the other piece is you got to get the tag manager code on all the pages of your site, because that's what actually powers the analytics. So you can get your code in Tag Manager. You click on, there's a little blue highlighted thing here. It'll show you the snippet of code and tell you how to place it. You can have a developer do this. If you have a WordPress site, you can also do this through some plugins, but you just got to get the code on every page of your site. Then you can go into the GA4 interface, and this is that section I mentioned called enhanced measurement. So this is a really cool feature. They added some things by default that we had to customize in UA, that we had to set up ourselves. Well, now they're in here by default. You can measure things like scrolls on a page, outbound clicks, video engagement, file downloads. So I believe these are all on by default. The one recommendation I would give would be to turn off the form interaction. And that's because this kind of gives skewed data. A lot of us have found that it's not accurate for form interactions. There's better ways to do it through custom tags. So I'm not going to get into that, but if you need help with that, you can always ping me on how to track your forms. In this data retention section menu, you have two choices, because with GA4, Google is very cognizant of data privacy, and there's a lot of that has gone into this. And part of that is how long they're letting you keep data. So by default, it's set to 2 months, but that's not super useful because a lot of us, for analysis, we need to go further back in time. So I would always set this to 14 months. That will allow you to at least do a year-over-year comparison in your data. Then we have connecting some of your product links. So you'll see a whole gaggle of products here. And I think these are all Google products. Ones that you'll want to connect, you should definitely link Search Console to your GA4. And if you're not familiar with Search Console, that's just what used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. And it gives you information about Google search and how people find your website. In fact, it'll give you the keywords that people click on to come to your site. So by linking this, you'll be able to see that data within Google Analytics. The other thing that I would recommend setting up is Google Ads. If you're running ads, obviously there's the separate Google Ads platform, but you can pull that data into GA4 by connecting it here. So I would definitely connect that if you are running paid ads. And then the final thing is you're going to want to set up at least one conversion. So the biggest thing with the new GA4 data model is that everything is an event now. So like these are examples of events here. So click to call is an event, file download, you can make anything an event. File download is one of those default ones. Some of these other ones you see here, these are ones that were custom created. But once you have an event set up, then you can just easily come over here and toggle it on as a conversion. So this is really the idea of setting up a goal, just getting it set up. That was something we always recommended in UA also, because without goals and conversions, you can't baseline how you're performing. So those are kind of your minimum viable things to get this up and running. Now, another one, this one's kind of new. We haven't really had to think about this much before, but so the A in the SMART framework is archiving. And there's two pieces to this. The first one, probably the most time sensitive, has to do with your UA data. So, they stopped collecting new data July 1st of this year. But the important thing to know is you're going to lose access to all of that data a year from now, actually less than a year from now. So on July 1st of next year, you will no longer be able to access all that universal analytics. Like, you can still go in there today and see all your old data, but you will eventually lose access. So you need to decide, do you want to keep any of that historical data? You might have data that goes back 10 years, it might go back 2 years, whenever you set it up, but you need to think about if you want to keep any of that data. And if the answer is yes, then you have to export it out of Universal Analytics and then archive it somewhere before that July 1st deadline. So if you are going to archive some of that old data, things that you need to think about is, what date range of data do you want? How far back in time? Do you need all 10 years of data? I would say no, but some people want to have it. Maybe you only want to go back a year. You can decide. Which reports are you going to archive? And I would recommend just think about the ones that you use most often and just archive those. And then there's the idea of the date setting. So, how granularly do you want to be able to see that data? Is it daily, weekly, monthly? And then finally, where are you going to store this data? Is it going to be in a spreadsheet, kind of like Excel or Google Sheets? Or are you going to send it to like a data warehouse, a database, kind of like something like BigQuery, which is Google's data warehousing option. So that's the UA archiving. And then the other piece of this to think about is what you can do now with your GA4 data. And one of the things to note is that now in GA4, they're actually giving us access to all of our raw data if we want it. Previously in UA, you could only do that if you were paid for the GA360. So now you can get all of your old data and you can own it. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But the other things to know are, so when you look at the standard reports in GA4, the default out-of-the-box reports, those don't have any retention limits by time. So like you can go back, you can go all the way back to whenever you started running GA4. So if you were an early adopter and that was like 3 years ago, you can see full 3 years worth of data in the standard reports. Now, they have these reports called explorations that are custom reports. Those they put a limit on. Those you can only go back 14 months. So this is going to be important if you need to look further back in time. So if you want to, so when we're talking about GA4 data, maybe archiving isn't the best word, maybe backing it up, because it's almost like backing up like your website data. There's plenty of people that do that. So things to think about if you want to archive your GA4 data or back it up to something like BigQuery. Do you need to do advanced data analysis? Things that go beyond what you might be able to do in the standard reports or even the exploration reports. If you need to be running like regressions and predictive analysis and you're running like SQL, things like that, you're getting into the data science world, you're probably going to have to back up your data and then, run it out of BigQuery. Do you use Looker Studio, a third-party visualization tool for your reporting? Well, then you might need to back up your data to BigQuery because there's some issues with Looker Studio. And we'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. Maybe you just want to own all of your data. Because before, like I said, we couldn't access it unless you had that paid tool. Well, now you can have it. So if you just want to have all your own data and just store it, you can do that. So you can back that up. Obviously, if you're going to be doing this, people always know, well, what's that going to cost me? Well, if you're just doing storage, that's very cheap. So if you just want to store your data just so you have it, it's the costs are almost minimal. We're talking like less than, it's like $30 a month, very small for what you can do. Now, if you're going to be running reports and queries and things off of that data, running regressions, predictive things, that kind of thing, doing like data science type activities, then you get charged. So each time you run queries on the data, then you get charged by Google. And depending on how many you're doing, that can start to add up. That can start to get into the hundreds of dollars a month. But again, that's probably for larger organizations that have a data team. So solutions for doing some of this archiving, there's two big ones that people are using now. There's a tool called Analytics Canvas. They just came out with a solution to archive your UA data. It's very, the cost is pretty low, and it's pretty awesome. It's like $99 per view. And so it's that's what I'm going to start using with clients. It actually just came out of beta, I think the last couple weeks. And so it's available to the public now, and they make it really easy to archive any of that old UA data you want. And they also will send data to GA4. And then if you've got a bigger budget and you have a lot more scale that you need to do, you might consider Supermetrics, but they're a lot more expensive to do that stuff. I would not try to do any of this manually. I mean, you can export some data, but it's very slow and very painful if you try to do it manually. So you'll most likely have to use a third-party tool. And there's probably going to be more of these tools coming out in the next 6 months because, people will be like, hey, I can whip up something that people will pay for to do this. Moving on to the R in the SMART framework, this is reporting. So this is how the options to look at your data. So there's basically 3 ways to see your GA4 data. There's standard reports that are the out-of-the-box reports. They're actually a little better now because they allow us to do a little bit of customization. So that's actually pretty cool. We didn't have that in UA. Then there's these reports called explorations, and these are completely custom. You have to build these, but they're pretty powerful, the ones that are available. And then the third option is using like a dashboarding tool. So you can use something like Looker Studio, which used to be called Data Studio, but that's the Google product. Power BI, Tableau. There's really hundreds of these tools available, but those are some of the bigger ones that people use. So your standard reports, when you go in and look, you'll see they're on the left. Once you go into the menu, the names are different than they were in Universal Analytics. And there's a lot less reports. So they've kind of consolidated and made simpler a lot of the reports because it was pretty overwhelming before in UA. As I was saying, kind of a new feature to the standard reports is that you can do some customization. So you can actually customize those menus and you can customize the dimensions and metrics within those reports. So here's an example of customizing the menus. So over here is what the menus looked like in Universal Analytics. So we had what a lot of people called ABC. So you had audience acquisition and then behavior conversions, your ABCs. But then the GA4 default is different. Now we've got engagement, we've got monetization, so the reports that are under here are similar to what's under here, but maybe I don't want to try to relearn all of this. So you can come in and there's a way to just rename these. So this is in GA4. I customized this and renamed it just like I had it over here. So I don't have to learn something new. So that's kind of a cool feature that we can do that. When you look at, so this is an example of one of the tables in a standard report. So this is a traffic. This is showing us our traffic sources by channel. Well, you can customize this primary dimension here, like what shows up here. And then you can also customize your metrics. So like these columns that show up, we can add, we can delete, we can reorder these. So we were never able to do that in UA. So that's kind of a cool feature. And if you want to do that, what you have to do is in the upper right-hand corner of every standard report, you look for this pencil. You click on that. And then here's kind of what it'll look like. So here you'll get to choose, okay, do you want to customize your dimensions or your metrics? And then once you choose those, then when you're in here, so you can reorder these, you can delete these if you want. Here you can add new ones. Same thing with metrics. So you've got up to 12 metrics if you want that many columns of data. But you could also you could delete all of these and just go with like 3 metrics. So it's really powerful how you can customize these standard reports now.
Hey, Kyle, we have a question
yeah.
on customization from Linda.
Mm-hmm.
She asked if you customize, does it change it for everyone on the account or only the individual users?
That's a great question. It changes it for everyone.
Ooh.
So you need to be careful when you do this. It's good and bad. Like I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about it. But yeah, if you have a lot of team members that are going to be in there, then you have to kind of come to consensus on this stuff. So, but that's a great question. And we'll see in a second, the exploration is actually different. So yeah, if you make changes, everyone that can log in will see those changes. This exploration, this is a brand new thing in GA4. I recommend, there's actually 7 or 8 of these. These are the ones that I use the most. So there's a freeform, funnel, and path. So when you go into explorations, it's this, I don't even know what this is, this weird little blue icon. That's how you get into explorations. And so it just so happens that the ones that I always use are the first ones here. So maybe they did that on purpose. They knew that most people would use these. The other ones that are available are a little more edge case type things. So most people don't need them. The thing to remember about these is these are custom. So you have to build these. So what I typically do is I will click on the template and they'll have a filled in default one. And then I'll edit the one that they have versus start. Like I never use this because it's just too hard to figure out. So I'll show you those in a second. But the thing to know about these is you build these. So you have to add the dimensions and the metrics, any segments, any filters you want to use. One cool feature that I like about these reports is each exploration, you can have multiple tabs. So you can kind of group things into one report, which I find useful in many cases. And then here's that thing. So when you share, you can share these with people. So, okay, so I guess the bullet I should have had in here is the exploration reports are tied to your login. So I won't be able to see any that you create in your login unless you share them with me. So when you hit that share button, then I will be able to read those and see the data, but I won't be able to edit them. So this is different than the standard reports. These are tied to your login until you share them. this is just a kind of what it looks like when you have to build these out. So the thing to realize here is you've got a column here that has these are all of the pieces you're going to use to build the report. So you've got things like segments, dimensions, metrics. They give you default ones, but you have to go in. I guess I kind of covered it with my arrow, but these plus signs, when you click on these, it'll take you to a report or a menu with all of these options, and then you can import the pieces you need into here. Then once you have them here, you drag them over to this second column, which puts them in the rows and the columns, and then your output is the report over here. So this is just a simple free form one. And then when you're done with this, you can minimize these columns so that they'll just pop down to a little tab and make this report a little bit bigger and easier to see. So this is the free form one, which is basically like a table. This is what the path exploration would look like. And this one's pretty powerful. You can keep clicking on any of these nodes and they will keep expanding to show you the paths of actions that people took. And what's kind of neat is now we can kind of mix. Like a lot of times we would just look at like the pages people were on. So like, what page did I start on? Then what page did I go to? Then what page? Well, now we can actually mix in actions, so this might be a page, but then maybe I want to see, in this might be, did they watch a video? And then did they go do a different thing? So it gives us a lot of flexibility in how we track what people are doing. And then they have a funnel report, and this is kind of the same thing. You can track the steps in the funnel can either be, just pages, or they can be actions like we might be used to in an e-commerce environment, like where this might be, view product page, add to cart, view cart, checkout, that kind of thing. But again, you can define what those steps are.
Question from Bob. Can
Yeah.
the data be exported to CSV or Excel?
Some things can be. So I'm not sure what this looks. I haven't exported. It'll be somewhere up here. If you are able to export it, I haven't exported any of these, like the path or the funnel. I could see how the funnel they could do. The path one, I don't know if you could do. Definitely the table, the freeform one, I have exported that because it's it's in a table. So that one you can easily do. And then the standard reports too. You can export those into a spreadsheet or like a PDF. Obviously, if you do it in a PDF, you can't, sort or run calculations on the data. And then the third way to kind of look at your data is in one of those visualization tools. So, these are kind of the three big ones that I mentioned: Looker Studio, Power BI, Tableau. And again, there's many more of these. Looker Studio is one that a lot of people use because it's a Google product. It's free. It integrates easily with all of the other Google products. So this is just an example of, what a Looker Studio portion of a dashboard might look like. You can have, metrics, scorecards, you can have bar graphs, pie chart if you want to use that. You can have, different filtering and sorting features. So there are some things to think about, though, if you do use Looker Studio. This kind of came to a shock to people last fall. People's dashboards started breaking. And what we learned was that Google started enforcing these API quota limits. So when you connect your Looker Studio directly to the GA4 API, each time you query that, you're counting up a number of queries, well, they started enforcing limits on that. And if you went above the limits, then your dashboard would break. So ways that this is happening, that you're exceeding those limits, is if you have a very complex dashboard. So if you have a lot of components, tables, graphs, charts, etc., multi-pages, things that keep updating all the time. Someone changes the date or changes a filter, that kind of thing. If your dashboard has too many filters or segments that have to process each time it loads, and then if too many people are looking at the dashboard at the same time, because that's just multiplying all of these API calls. So what people were seeing was this, like they were getting error messages in their Looker Studio dashboards. And so it was kind of a shock. Now they have, this started, I think, last October. They did make one increase in the limits. And when I say limits, there's an hourly limit. I think there's a daily limit, and then there might be a monthly limit. But the one that seems to be, most people that they fail is if they do fail, is the hourly limit. So if you get an error or something like this, it could be because you've exceeded your quota. So what can we do if we want to use Looker Studio? Some of the solutions are, first thing you could do is try simplifying your dashboard. So you could reduce the number of elements that are in your dashboard, reduce the number of filters and segments that are in there. You could limit access to the dashboard. So, does everybody on your team need to be able to go in there and change sorting features and change the date and do things that will run up the number of queries? If you can't do these first two, then you might be forced to connect your GA4 to BigQuery. And the reason you would do that is because then you could use BigQuery as the data source for your Looker Studio report. So you wouldn't be connecting directly to the API anymore. You'd be connecting to BigQuery, and BigQuery does not have any limits on it. So the way this would work was you'd back up your data like daily from GA4 to BigQuery, and then you would run your data studio from BigQuery. So that's kind of the more complicated solution, that if you have a pretty intensive dashboard that you need to run on Looker, then you probably got to go to add BigQuery to your process. And the final part of the SMART framework is T for training. And the reason we need this is because it is a brand new platform. It's very different from Universal Analytics on many dimensions. The data model is different. Everything is now an event. The menus we've seen are different. They've moved things around. They've added these new features like the exploration reports, and it's just very different. And it has a little bit of a steep learning curve. And like anything, until you get in there and start playing around with it, you kind of just have to get hands-on with it. So I recommend setting aside, maybe an hour a week to just start playing around with it. Maybe have somebody dedicated on your team that's gonna, start learning it, or have everybody learn a little bit of it. And what I try to recommend is that people, think of a question that you want to answer with Universal Analytics, so maybe, how do I find, my top landing pages on my website? And then try to go find that, answer that question in GA4. So start with those top questions that you want to answer, and see if you can find that data in there. So fortunately, there's a lot of great ways to learn this stuff. So there's, the internet is full of great free content. There's a lot of great paid courses out there. And the measurement community is pretty great. There's a lot of smart and generous people and communities out there that are willing to share their expertise and are sharing their expertise. So some of the resources that I would recommend if you're just kind of getting started with this stuff, Data Driven You, run by a guy named Jeff Sauer. He used to have a site called Jeffalytics. I'm actually part of this community. There's a lot of great learnings there. CXL, they're a teaching platform that teaches all digital marketing, but their GA4 classes are great. Fred Pike is a really fabulous instructor. He's also part of this Data Driven You community. Analytics Mania, Julius, he's got great info. He gets a lot into Google Tag Manager and how it works with GA4. Chris Mercer at Measurement Marketing IO, he's great at simplifying complex issues. I've taken classes from his site. And then Christopher Penn is on top of things at Trust Insights. He's also, side note, he's also great at AI stuff and is creating a lot of awesome content around AI. But all of these resources, I've taken classes from all of these sites and I participate in communities here. So those are great starting points. So that was kind of the framework as a whole. So let's just kind of go through that again quickly. So we had these 5 key elements. First, you want to have strategy. You need a plan to make this move to GA4. So note those questions you want to be able to answer, the information you need to collect, actions you're going to take, and think about who's going to do this stuff. Measurement, I kind of showed you that minimum viable setup, but you're going to want to use Google Tag Manager. Connect anything like Google Ads, Search Console, set up any custom events you might need, create at least one conversion. Archiving, so there's 2 pieces of that. What are you going to do with your UA data before you lose it a year from now? And then also, what do you want to do with your new GA4 data? Do you want to back it up and own it? Do you need it maybe to hook up to Looker Studio, that kind of thing? So, and then in the reporting, there's the 3 ways to look at your data, basically. The standard reports that you can do a little customization. Then you have these great new custom reports called explorations. They're pretty powerful. The freeform, the funnel, and the path are the ones that I would recommend. And then you've got data visualization tools, third-party tools, Looker Studio, Power BI, etc. And remember, if you're using Looker Studio, you might have added issues of exceeding that quota limit, which might force you to, run BigQuery as your data source or simplify your dashboard. And then the last thing is I highly recommend training. You can try to learn this stuff on your own, but it doesn't make sense. So, learn from people that are in the trenches working on it. They've gone through a lot of the pain already, and they can help you learn this stuff quicker. So I'm gonna give a link to this. Well, and I might, if I can dig it up, I might be able to drop it in the chat too. But you'll definitely get a link to this framework in the follow-up email, because it's a spreadsheet that I have, and then it goes into more detail for each of these sections, and you can drop notes in there and mark off if you've completed things, that kind of stuff. And it's it'll help you keep track of all these different things as you move to GA4. So as we all know, moving stinks in the real world and in the digital world, as we're seeing, but it can be made easier if we are smart about it. So that's it. Thanks for joining me today. And now we can take more questions if we've got time, Dennis.
Yes, we got a question from Linda. What's your opinion of getting a certification in GA4?
It's tricky. I guess it depends what your goal is of having the certification. Like if you're trying to do it to get a job, then maybe. Like to be perfectly honest, I don't have any of the certifications. When they used to have the UA one years ago, and they've probably changed this. Well, you had to pay to do it every year, and you could only do it like every year and a half. And then it wasn't even the old one it wasn't very practical. So it was all just about like knowing the limitations of the tool, but not actually how to use it. I'm hoping that the new certification from Google is actually useful, but I haven't gone through it because honestly, I think I learned better from a lot of the professionals that are using it than from what Google provides. But I could be wrong. Maybe they've improved their training, but I would almost recommend getting training from some of those other sources that I recommended. But if you're trying to get a job, maybe as some kind of an analyst or something, then having some kind of certification would probably be useful. So then it might be useful to start with the GA4 one, the one that Google does, and then maybe move on, fill in the gaps with some of these other ones. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Got it. Bob has his hand raised. Go ahead, Bob.
Kyle, thank you very much. Very, very informative, particularly for a newbie to the analytics space. I'm bringing on a client who has a text-based website, lots of pages, that sort of thing. Has been business for lots of years, but wants to do some analytics on it. Is GA4's Google's introductory product for doing analytics, or is there a starter kind of package? The stuff that you showed looked for a pretty sophisticated e-commerce site that has an entire data analytics team. But getting started, is this the right solution? And how do you actually sign up for using GA4? Yeah, let me leave it at those questions.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot there. This is their only solution. Now I think there is so it's free, just like it was before. I believe there is also a paid version, but those are just for like enterprise level. And even like the old tool, you don't have to use a lot of the stuff that's in GA4. So one of the things I try to do is help people identify like, hey, and it goes back to that plan. What do you want to be able to measure? Now that we know that, like, okay, you only need to go to these 2 reports and this specific data. So I try to, and then if you want, using that customization feature for the menus, you could just add those couple reports. So you could actually really simplify it.
Let me add a little bit perspective. Maybe you'll have commentary to this. So today, websites and analytics on websites are 2 distinct things. Analytics is after the fact, websites are before the fact. There are some very sophisticated things you can do with GPT-4's code interpreter. So it has access to Python and all of Python's libraries. So there is literally not a single thing you can do in Excel today, all the fancy functions that you can't do with simple typing in queries. You can also go direct, and this is why I asked you about exporting. You can actually go to any visualization you want. Remember, this is a mathematics, science, data thing. And while Tableau and Power BI, that I'm not an expert in by any stretch of the imagination, are cool for setting up dashboards for CEOs who don't know how to use data. Python with its libraries exceeds all of those. So there's nothing that can be done there. All of those are a subset of it. So the opportunity for all of us, quite frankly, is the integration of using natural language processing analysis with the data. And to give you, to put some meat on this of the interaction, connect them, and you can do a specific ad campaign with or not just campaign, enter certain pages on a website or text on a website and see the effect and then visualize it. You can't do that with a before and after kind of analytics thing. So it looks fantastic what you're showing in terms of kind of old world graphical measurement, probably a huge level up from universal analytics, but it won't compete with what you can do combining NLP with data analysis. And that's kind of where the world is heading. It's just, I'm wondering whether I could export the data for this client and then use into CSV or Excel format for analysis. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, it sounds like if you need to do that, if you might be better off sending it to BigQuery and then pulling it from BigQuery. Because if you're going to be running, if there's tools to run all these SQL queries and everything, then I would do that. I mean, why use a spreadsheet? Is that
I don't know anything about
easier
BigQuery.
And then so to a larger point, what you're talking about is this is no different than before GA4 and before all the AI. It was like, how complex do you want to get? These tools can be as simple as you need or as complex as you need. So, what it goes back to what problems you're trying to solve, and then what kind of resources do you have to do that? Like all that stuff you were talking about, like somebody's got to know how to do that. So it's not enough that it's just available. You have to need that level of computational value, and then B, somebody or some things got to own that and be able to do it. But I think what you're talking about is it's awesome that we can do these things now, but most companies, at least the ones I work with, they're nowhere near that advanced, and they wouldn't even know what to do with a lot of that stuff. When we're talking about AI, I'm just starting to investigate how I can use that to, more quickly analyze data. But you definitely can. And, I can't wait to learn more about that stuff. But this is one of the tools that I use right now. And it's enough for most people. If you plan out what you want to measure and do a lot of 80-20, because you don't need everything that's in there. So I don't know, but yeah, the future is wide open for this stuff. And it's a challenge for me too, because I'm trying to learn what skills do I have to learn next to be able to best help my customers. Like, do I learn how to do all this AI stuff? Do I learn all of this BigQuery? Like, it's a constant challenge for me too, is figuring out how to best help the marketers that I work with.
Thank you, Kyle.
We have time for one more question or comment. Anyone got one? All right, and with that, we have upcoming meetups. We have one in September on using AI for design. And for those in the Bay Area, we're meeting in October in San Mateo in person. So check our meetup page for details. Kyle, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity,
Dennis.
Dennis.
Your seventh talk with us.
Ooh, do I get a jacket? Do I get like a green jacket or something?
Jacket, or if you come to the Bay Area, we'll buy you some beer.
Oh, all right. Now I have a reason to come out there. I'll do that.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.